This ain't a good trade for the Pacers. It's a great trade.
Okay.
It's a great trade, not even a good trade. I love what they're doing in Indiana. They're like, hey, you know what? Let's go for it. You're only afraid of the Boston Celtics. You're not afraid of the Bucks. We own the Bucks. We beat them pretty much every time we played them this year. The Sixers, I think they need another piece. We only got to beat the Boston Celtics. If we got a chance to get an all-star.
What is up, Pacers Nation? You are listening to the Pacers Post Up, brought to you by the brothers of basketball, Brad and Ryan. An all-star, says Sir Charles Barkley, and a two-time All-NBA power forward. Pascal Siakam is in, Bruce Brown, Jordan Nwora out, plus a couple of future first-round draft picks. Has Kevin Pritchard really done it again? My goodness. We are breaking it all down here over the next hour or so stay tuned. We're talking the trade, the fit, the future. What does this mean for this season and beyond? It's all coming at you right here on the Pacers Post Up. All right, here we are, getting ready to recap one of the more exciting days in recent memory here for the Pacers. Obviously in the midst of a 6-game road trip. We've got a game tonight in in Sacramento tonight, Portland tomorrow. But that is not the news. The news of the day is I'm going to call it blockbuster trade for the Indiana Pacers, acquiring Pascal Siakam from the Toronto Raptors. I'm sure if you're a Pacers fan, you're already aware of it, but we're going to kind of break it down, talk about it from all angles, put it in context historically, and just kind of get into the little details on, I'll say it, why I love this move. I think why Ryan is a big fan of this move and what this means for the Pacers now going into the next couple of years as the Tyrese Halliburton extension kicks in. And yeah, we've got a game tonight in Sacramento. So Ryan, where do you want to start?
You know, you could start pretty much anywhere on this. It's one of the more exciting trades probably we've had, at least in my lifetime with the Pacers. But I think we start, honestly, just right at the top of the organization and give KP maybe his flowers yet again, as he has quite the trade resume that continues now and has just found a way to continue to turn, what some assets might be depreciated or devalued and turn them into something that hopefully is going to be fun. So I'd kind of just like to tip the cap, and we can kind of just talk about, what we gave up, what we got in return. I mean, obviously, pretty much all we got was Siakam in a second rounder. But, yeah, I got to say, KP has kind of done it again for us, found a new way or found a guy to bring into this organization. So what are your thoughts with KP?
Well, I think it's poignant and fitting to start there because I saw a little bit of a graphic last night on the Bleacher Report feed. Somebody was updating the Paul George trade tree. And I just find it hilariously ironic and, like I said, fitting that here we are, years removed, many ups and downs removed from the PG era, and that second first-round pick in the 2024 draft, so this June's draft, is a byproduct of some of the outfall from the PG trade. Not directly, but we are still seeing, as you said, the acquisition of assets that Kevin Pritchard and Chad Buchanan to a second degree have been able to acquire over the last couple of years seemingly pay off in a way that I don't remember a trade really feeling quite like this one, where the player is so established. We're talking about somebody, and age is going to be something that gets talked about now, next year, and certainly when history has its say, evaluating this trade 3, 4, 5 years down the road. Pascal Siakam's age is going to be a hot button topic, but we haven't gotten an established player like this to come to Indianapolis, Indiana, whatever you want to call it, via trade, via free agency, what have you. I think that this is the first time I've felt like, okay, all NBA level talent, all-star level talent. He's still in his prime. I know the age is going to be a thing, but he's played less seasons in the NBA than Miles Turner has. Yep. So just to put that in perspective from, how much wear and tear is on this guy's body, I don't think a 29-year-old NBA player is old. No, it's not Tyrese Halliburton's timeline. But if history has told us anything, what are you waiting? You're waiting for 4 or 5 years down the road? I mean, we've got a team that is, everybody's going to sit here and talk and say, well, this doesn't vault them above Milwaukee or above Boston or Philadelphia. Okay, fair enough.
Yep.
But we're 4-1 against the Bucks. I think we've split the season series with the Celtics, if I'm not mistaken. We had the blowout loss, the win in the in-season tournament, and then split the home and home.
Yep.
Deal a couple weeks ago. So, and we've got an in-season tournament win on the road against Philadelphia, and we lost one at 2 days prior to that in-season tournament win. So I guess my point is, we've got a team that is on the rise, and you've got a player that is playing at a historic level now. Yep. Forget that his contract kicks in and we got another 5 years or what. I don't buy into any of that shit, to be honest with you, because if Tyrese Halliburton wants out of Indianapolis next year, you better believe he's getting out of Indianapolis. Yep. So I'm not banking on some, down the road, blah, blah, blah. Pascal Siakam is an all-NBA player, and he's a guy that seemingly fits, and I think that's probably the best place to start. So I tip of the cap to Kevin Pritchard and Chad Buchanan. I think it's, we're giving up 2 assets. Actually, before we get into the Siakam, I want to talk about this, and I know I've gone off on a tangent. The picks, everybody's freaking out about the picks. We have 2 first-rounders in Jarris Walker and Ben Shepherd that can't get on the floor.
Yep.
So what are 2 draft picks next year going to do?
Truthfully, not much. I'm with you. Shepard's not getting minutes. Jarris isn't getting minutes. And if you look at it, two of them are next year. So by June of next year, we'll have only gotten rid of really 1 asset of the future beyond that. So,
point being, what we've given up in this trade is 2 first-rounders from this June draft that if we bring in more young guys, all it's going to do is contribute to the logjam today. So you're basically unloading a contract in Bruce Brown, who, let's face reality, has been fine for us this year, but was not worth a $22 million price tag in terms of the team option this summer. Jordan Nwora, who, again, has shown flashes here and there. No disrespect to the guy, but he can't get on the floor. We can't even play the rookies we have. So what you're going to add more late first-round draft picks this summer to fill a young talent logjam. Really what we're talking about here is a first-rounder in 2026. That's the only future asset that we're really giving away here, so to speak. And again, I go back to all-NBA level player, somebody that, could you have taken the swing in free agency? Sure, but your odds of, and this all this hinges on the fact that Siakam re-signs with us.
Yeah, this entire podcast, we're in the assumption that he will be a long-term Pacer. If he ends up going somewhere else, which all reporting shows, I think he's very eager to sign with us in the summer. So I think on all fronts we can feel pretty good there. But yes, this will basically all be under the assumption he returns. If he does not, obviously everything we say is disregarded.
Yeah, this is a terrible trade. It's a terrible trade. If you don't sign him, it's a terrible trade. And I think, Ryan and I, before we jumped on here, kind of exchanged some texts, about the contract. Yep. This is somebody you're going to have to pay max money.
Yep, it's looking that way.
I just don't see any way around it. And the reality is, and why I'm so bullish on the trade, Indianapolis is not attracting this caliber of player for anything below the max. Yeah. You're not getting a hometown discount or I want to go play in LA or I want to go play in Miami or whatever. I've got a sponsorship deal. It's Indianapolis. So when you're going to try and lure guys here, there's a reason that David West, coming off of a knee injury in his age 31 season, is the franchise's best free agent signing in its history.
Literally.
So, Ryan made a good point that we're going to, there's going to be those fans that say, oh my God, he's not worth it. And this, that, and the other. And you're entitled to your opinion, but we'll see how the rest of this season plays out. We should sign this guy to the dotted line tomorrow if we could. I know he wants to wait, but this is the right move for a number of reasons, and I guess we can kind of get into the fit and what the rest of the season looks like.
I actually wanted to even comment one more thing. There's a lot of people out there are kind of saying, like, why didn't we just wait till free agency to go after to get this guy? Because he's going to be a free agent at the end of the season. And a couple notes on there. One, and we can even look back at Paul George. I don't think it's a bad thing in the NBA if a guy is on an expiring deal and then kind of tells the team and allows teams to get assets. It's especially for small markets. We saw this literally with PG. If a guy just leaves in free agency, you lose them for nothing. We were literally just talking about the PG tree or the Paul George tree earlier and all that we've gotten from it. So Siakam's in the same boat, and the reason you go get him is, again, the exact same thing that happened to Paul George. We heard he wanted to go to L.A. That was all the rumors. OKC took a chance on him, ended up signing a deal. Now, obviously, that went south a couple years later, but it's kind of all in that mantra. So when you look at it, and then what we give up, we've talked about Bruce, which, was a good player, but, we're obviously getting an upgrade in Nwora, and then a couple of picks, which we give KP his flowers earlier, but if you look over his first-round draft picks, it's not quite the same list that his trades have done for us.
You're getting Holiday, Goga, Leaf. I mean, it's, Ijax, and I love Ijax, but it's not like we're hitting dingers.
No, and we probably have his best draft picks, or at least finger crossed hoped, already in the building. So there's no need, as we've already kind of reiterated. So I just kind of wanted to touch on that. And also, and this has been reported as well, if we wanted to sign him in free agency outright, we would have still had to given up more players, actually, in order to make the contract work. There's a lot, you can get into that, but it was smart to go after him now. He seems eager. He seems happy. Get him in the building. Plus, if you're just looking at a couple first-round picks, it's going to be way more fun. We can talk about expectations, but, I'm now thinking, first-round playoff win possibly, kind of things like that, which will make it a lot more fun this year. And then, just continue to build the reps between those two is going to be nice. So I think it was the right time to strike. I don't think this is, people out there 3 firsts for rental. That's obviously not what this is. So I'm pretty excited. And now, sorry, we can get into the fifth.
You're fine. And yeah, this is not intended to be 3 picks for a rental. I think it's, I think it's pretty phenomenal that we actually were able to pull this deal off without getting rid of Walker or Matherin or, and you talk about Bruce Brown, and he's been a fine player, but his skill set is really replicated by Nembhard at a fraction of the price, and, somebody that we're going to be able to hopefully keep in the building. And I kind of want to talk about, a couple of things here. Just to make sure we touch on all this, the fit certainly with Siakam, how he stacks up against any alternative that is even remotely realistic for us, because I think you always have to weigh this through the lens of, okay, if not Siakam, where else were we going to turn? Was there another free agent? Was there somebody else that you realistically thought we could trade for? Because I'm not really sold on either of those paths. I'd like to talk about it in the context of OG Anunoby too, because he just got traded. This is somebody that's kind of been talked about in this same, rumor mill over the last couple of months. And then what do they do with the lineups? Because I've heard a lot of different things about, okay, does this mean, Jalen Smith to the bench, Siakam at the 4, Nesmith at the 3, and is it Buddy? Is it Matherin? Is it Nembhard? Is it, do we play Siakam at the 3? I'm not a fan of that, but all those different things. So I guess, Ryan, we'll start with the fit and what we know about Siakam, or what we think we know. What are you most excited about from what you've heard, what you've seen, what you know about him as a player, and how he's going to fit into what we're doing here this year?
I could say, just as a fan, excitement obviously on the offensive end is, the glove fit he brings, just in terms of what he adds is kind of that, mid-post kind of roamer who's also a ball handler, a facilitator. But the real key fit to me is really a fit on that defensive end as well. And that's kind of where I'd like to start, actually. It's just, we've had, 1,000 conversations, every Pacer fan. We're missing a large wing, and there's just not a lot out there. And now you get a 6'8", 6'9", 230, 7'3" wingspan guy who's going to, I think, pair great with Miles Turner, maybe one of the first trades since other than Tyrese trade that really helps bring out some Miles Turner. So it's one of those things where I was just kind of looking in my head, all right, I think we'll talk lineups maybe, but I think there's 4 starters between Halliburton, Nesmith, Siakam, and then Turner. Those are probably your 4 you can lock in. So if you look at the wing position, which is where we have struggled with the Tatums, the Bridges, the LeBrons, the Giannis's, those guys, the bigger wings, Now we have two guys, I think, on our roster that we can throw at them that are at least going to bring something to the table between Neesmith and Siakam. And where I think Neesmith is more of that kind of in your grill, he's real close to you, real physical defender, which we want. Siakam kind of brings a different style. He's obviously longer, a little bigger. He plays, one of the words I've heard is kind of more of a conservative defense, but not in a bad way. He's very good at where to be, placement, switching, versatility. So when we go up against teams like the Celtics, where they've got Tatum and Brown, and where we're going, all right, we can put Neesmith on one of them, and then we throw in Buddy, or we throw in Obi. Right. I mean, who are you putting on there? Now it's like, okay, we're going into that, take your pick. You're putting Siakam on one and Brown on the other, and you can rotate them and still throw other guys. But now you've got two guys who fit the mold of wings that can defend, which instantly, even if Siakam is just an average defender and there's, over his career this year, it sounds like he's kind of taking one of those maybe off years on defense as the Raptors kind of have not been as solid as they'd hoped. So we can talk about that, but I am definitely, in my head, I'm thinking, all right, now we can throw two guys with length on defense at the wings that have been routinely crushing us.
Yeah, I love the whole take, because I think that's exactly what this is, and why the fit is not only, there have been some stats thrown out there about his transition, field goal percentage, and how he stacks up in the league, top 10 player in transition on a couple of different metrics. And I think offensively, I'll get to the defense in a second, but I think offensively you're talking about a guy that can step in day one and alleviate Tyrese Halliburton of always having to be the ball dominant player. Tyrese, if he's having an off night or in foul trouble or they're double teaming him, whatever, Siakam is a guy that you can give the ball to. He can handle the rock. He can get his own bucket. He can create. He's a basically 5 assist guy per night, and has been for the last 5 years. So this is not somebody that's just pounding the rock and going and getting buckets. He's a very versatile player, and I think that the versatility is what you're talking about on the defensive end as well. I've spent some time reading a little bit over the last 24 hours, just from the Raptors side of things, and kind of getting into some of their beat writers and what has been said about him over the last couple years, and they've really kind of positioned him as the guy that has allowed them to do a lot of different things defensively, because he can, they say, switch 1 through 5, but as I dug in a little deeper, it's really more of a comfort with that 2 to 4. He's not necessarily going to stay in front of your quickest guards, your Steph Currys, your Kyries, whatever. But let's look at it for what it is today. Our challenge is going to be the players you said, the Giannis's, the Chris Middletons, the Jason Tatums, the Jaylen Browns. And I think having a Neesmith and a Siakam that you can throw different bodies at them, you can make switches when you have to switch. I think what you said and what I heard a lot was that Siakam's length allows him to recover better against some of these bigger wings, where when a Neesmith, if he did get beat off the dribble, he was really putting a lot on Turner or that backside help to be able to come over, because essentially the Pacers are playing a little bit more of an aggressive on-ball defense. We're running people off the three-point line. We've made a commitment to say you're not going to shoot the three well on our team, and so it puts a lot of onus on the backside help or the switch defender or what have you. And I think the fact that Siakam can come in right away and give us the thing that we didn't have, which was a combination of stay in front of your man and length and size, because it was either you had Neesmith or Nembhard or Brown, which was kind of your let's stay in front of them, or it was Jalen Smith, Isaiah Jackson, Obi, Turner that was more of the length, but they couldn't stay in front of anybody. And so that's where I think the biggest fit is, and what has me excited. And people can say, oh, he's listen. We hear it all the time. Defense is an effort thing. You're playing for a losing team that's blowing up the roster, that you're constantly in trade talks, et cetera. I'm not surprised to hear that maybe he was taking a few possessions off on that end of the floor. I don't love it, but it's an infectious thing. You get him in the locker room with our team that you can't knock their energy. I'm really excited about that part of it. So
yeah, there's a couple things. One, on the effort part, if I'm going to try to make an excuse for the guy, he has since basically like 2020 been pretty much up there every year in total minutes played. I think in like the 2022-2023 season, he was at like 36 minutes a game and second in total minutes played that season. So he has played a lot of minutes, and if I was getting tired playing a lot of minutes, I think I'd know where I'd slack myself on which end I would choose. So maybe that plays into a little bit. I would not expect that minute load on our team. Tyrese right now leads us with 33, and then Bruce was second, who's now out, and Miles at 29. So we only have one player over 30 minutes, and he's probably going to slide into that 30 to 32 minutes would be my guess. But the other thing I think you really liked on the defensive end that I am particularly most excited about is that second side help defender. Anytime Miles is pulled out or we don't have Miles on the floor, maybe Jackson, whoever's playing that big who's rim protected, when we get pulled out, we often don't have any sort of force at that 4 position to help. Now, Jalen starting has helped a little bit, but let's just say Buddy on the weak side gets beat. Now Siakam is the one pulling in, which is just so much more of a threat. I mean, even if it results in a kick out, that's not a good news that somebody's getting beat, but we know our point of attack defense is a little weak at times. So it's so great to have him and Miles, two, I mean, if you're talking reaches, Siakam's a 7-foot reach, so two kind of 7-foot length guys who can kind of both mobile and move. And then the best part about Siakam is he can close out too. Even if he's pulled in, he's so long. And Caitlin Cooper had a great thing where she said he moves like a piece of paper would. Like he kind of just flows. He's got like really long, wide lateral steps. So he can get back, reach his hand up, play defense. So I think that's an awesome area to see, and just something literally we have not had due to lack of physical size. So that will be awesome to see.
7.5 rebounds over the last 5 years.
Yep.
That's his average. And we're 29th in the league right now in rebounding. Yep. So, I mean, that's the other piece of this that, you know, you've got somebody that I was just watching some quick highlights. I literally was looking up defensive highlights. He boxes out, which I know just sounds like, you know, what everybody should be doing, but it doesn't happen, particularly on this team. So that to me is something that you're kind of, again, you're kind of putting in somebody that I see as almost this Swiss Army knife player that just, I'm not saying he's the savior, but he fills a lot of needs and he's an upgrade in a lot of ways because we were trying to use multiple guys to fill those needs. It was like, okay, we need some backside help and some rebounding and length, so let's put in Jalen Smith. Or, oh, we need, you know, some lateral quickness and some on-ball defense and shooting. Let's bring in, you know, a Neesmith, or we're going to go small and have Brown and Nemhard and Neesmith, or whatever it is. So, you know, Obi Toppin struggled to stay in front of anybody. And Obi plays a different game. Obi's above the rim and has, you know, obviously improved the 3-point shot tremendously this year.
Yep.
Siakam, I don't get the sense is an above the rim guy. He's very crafty. He's got a good handle for his size and very efficient scorer. I think he's shooting over 50% from the field this year. And I know the 3-point numbers are down, but this was another thing that, you know, reading some of the Raptors, you know, reporting over the last couple of years, he's not had any floor spacing. And I think that's going to be something that you will see him improve. This was on the JJ Redick podcast yesterday, but the last 20 games, he's shooting something like 44% from three, 50% from the corners. You know, I watch him and I don't see somebody that can't shoot. I think we'll see that percentage. Even if it settles in at a 34 or 35, that's going to be good enough.
Yep.
And I think we get so lost in, oh my God, he's got to be able to shoot the three. We have a lot of guys that can shoot right now. And I think being able to have somebody that can take the ball and create for themselves without relying on Tyrese is the biggest benefit of all, quite frankly, because we just haven't had that.
Yeah, on that front, for sure, on the shooting, Siakam is a shooting threat in this league. If you go ask the players and Siakam comes down, first play of the game, gets an open three and hits it, they are not going to just leave him open. That's not how the NBA functions, just kind of as Miles Turner's had years where he fluctuates from that 30 to 35%, and teams still honor it because if he gets going, he changes the game. So it's one of those things
That's
where
a great point.
He is not probably going to be our knockdown shooter, but I mean, you look at our team, and half of them all are having career years from deep. When you look at Obi, Miles. I mean, basically just since Tyrese
Nesmith,
came around,
yeah.
Nesmith, Jalen Smith, all these guys improved their numbers. Now Bruce was a little bit of an outlier on that, but it comes and goes, with certain players. But I see no reason why shooting's truly going to be an issue. I don't think he'll need to put up a ton of attempts. I think truly that'll be the rest. His will be kind of using that floor, that middle to kind of navigate, and especially when Tyrese gets blitzed, which we know teams have started doing really more since the Lakers started doing in the in-season tournament. Having a large target in the middle that can then facilitate too is just going to work wonders. It will make it so much harder to blitz him because Tyrese will find him and then he'll make the right read because that's literally where he loves to play, is right kind of in the middle of that mid post. So
yeah, it's going to be really exciting to see how this plays out. I think Siakam is a guy that, listen, he doesn't get the wow factor love from the media like a Paul George or Kawhi Leonard or Jimmy Butler or you name it. But I shared some stats with you prior to us jumping on here, and I mean, this is a guy that if you just, and I know this is an oversimplification, I'll preface all this by saying that, but if you just look at standard splits, points, rebounds, assists over the last 5 seasons, this is a player that is not, you can't statistically tell a big difference between him, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Jimmy Butler, Jaylen Brown. I mean, it's 23-6-5, 24-6-4, 23-7-5. I mean, these are the third one being Siakam. They're all right. He's right in the same boat. So you're getting that caliber of player. Mind you, he's younger than Kawhi, PG, or Butler.
Yep.
So if you want to talk age,
better injury history too.
Yeah, I mean, he played 71 games last year, I think, and so this is something where you're getting Indiana, you're getting that level of player. I think if the name was different and I fed you the same stat lines and it was a Kawhi Leonard or a Paul George, everybody would be going, "Oh my God, we got the second superstar." I just don't think Siakam is looked at necessarily like that because he doesn't play above the rim. He doesn't have the flashy 3-point highlights, but this is a guy that is really good at a lot of things and, as I've said, fills a lot of voids in this current Pacers team. And that's what I think we should be paying more attention to right now.
Yeah, I think I texted you and said, now with him, the roster makes sense because everybody kind of shifts into the position they're playing. And if we want to kind of go into that, we can kind of start talking lineups maybe. So I kind of said earlier, I'll say it again, I think we're in agreement that Ty, Nesmith, Siakam, and Turner are now 4 for sure starters probably going into the playoffs.
100%. Yeah. There's no reason to adjust from that lineup, in my opinion.
I would agree. So I will ask you this. There's pretty much, for the third starter, I will also preference this. People love to talk about starters. I was looking earlier at our fourth quarter minutes because I'm more interested truly in who's closing probably than I am even who's starting.
For sure.
But with Rick, the truth is it's going to be Nembhard, Buddy, or Matherin, we can assume. Between those three, whoever gets the starting nod, whoever's hot will always finish. That is Rick's MO. If Buddy's clipping, he'll be in there. If Matherin's having his game, he'll be in there. If they need defense, they'll throw Nembhard. So It really doesn't truly matter who gets the spot. With that said, it's always fun to talk about. So, Brad, if it was your choice, who are you starting?
Well, I'm going to preface this by saying I don't necessarily think we are done making deals over the next couple of weeks.
Very true.
So,
very true.
And I think we need to talk about that after we talk about lineups. But if it's me, I'm starting Buddy Hield, and I think the reason that you start Buddy is, well, the reason that you weren't starting Buddy really was defense.
Yep.
And so now you're getting what we've just talked about, this versatile defender that's going to be able to help on the backside and cover, maybe some ails. I also think Buddy's defense has improved. I think in the last,
he gets a bad rap. He plays out there. He's more physical than he gets. He's still a little slow, working his screen navigation, but he's better than when we traded for him. What we were being told. Let's put it
he's definitely going to be probably your worst defender on the floor. Even though Tyrese isn't a great defender, I think he's a little more rangy, gets his hand in passing lanes a little better than Buddy. Buddy doesn't move his feet super well, but the reality is, and the reason that I would start Buddy is, what he does. He's a threat night in and night out from 3-point range. He's going to space the floor. And if you can get him hot, or if he can feed off of a Siakam dribble drive and a kick out or something like that, that's the perfect player to me to put in that lineup. It's not that I don't love Nembhard, but the big draw to Nembhard was start him because of defense and start him because he takes some of the
Playmaking, yeah.
he can handle the ball. It's a second ball handler, right? Well, now you have that in Siakam. He's so you don't really need his skill set in the first unit as much.
Yeah.
And Matherin's a guy that is getting better at that catch and shoot. He's getting better on the defensive end, certainly as a playmaker. But I like him having the opportunity to kind of be the alpha in the second unit, and continue to have a little bit of a higher usage rate and be a little bit more ball dominant, because I think that's where he thrives. So I would let him do that in the second unit, particularly to start games. And I think by doing this, you're spreading out some of, if you were to start Benedict or Nemhard, well, now you're kind of creating, I guess now it's Buddy and it's TJ and some others on the bench, Obi or whoever gets that spot, that really is going to struggle defensively. So I think you're kind of balancing out some of the units, and I get it. It's not like we're swapping 5 for 5.
Yeah.
Rick's going to manage that, Jenny's going to manage that, and the rest of the staff. But I go Buddy. Barring that he's not traded in the next 2 weeks, and we'll talk about that. But I think he's the best fit today. I wish he was shooting a little better, but that's how I go. Where are you at with that?
So I love this. I think everybody, and there's really no wrong answer to this, truthfully.
No.
I think whoever they go with is fine. I want to preference this and probably say I hope one day this is Matherin still. I think that's Matherin's job. We hope to either be the 2-3 at some point. With that said, I love him coming off the bench right now. Specifically, him and TJ McConnell still have always kind of had this symmetry that's worked, especially the way TJ is just hunting for the pass and Matherin is hunting for the bucket. So it kind of complements each other. So we'll agree there. I am on the Nemhard train.
Okay.
I would love just to see, because I think the Nemhard lineup is our best defensive lineup that includes Tyrese. I say that because every lineup that's our best is going to have Tyrese in it. So I kind of love that. I actually love the idea of having 3 playmakers even in the offense. I think Nemhard's best role is still kind of that 5th option role, which is why I like him in that spot, because in that lineup, he's the 5th offensive option, while he's probably, I still think, our best point of attack defender. So I think it complements Tyrese, because Tyrese can get the lesser of the 2 guards. Nemhard gets there. And Nemhard, he struggled to shoot. That's the one thing where if you kind of want a shooter in that spot, he's played better when he was last year, kind of just in that catch and shoot role, where he's been more of the playmaker and had more step backs and pull-ups this year, which has maybe hurt his percentage. But I kind of like him in that role. It keeps a little bit more shooting on the bench as well. But again, I'm not super picky. I want to see what this team defensively can get to, and wonder if, even if Nemhard's a little bit of a lesser on offense, are we able to still, I still think we put up 125 points a game with him in the starting lineup. So maybe we can hold teams to a little less, but as we've kind of said this whole time, I'm not super picky. That is just where my heart kind of goes.
Yeah. And it's hard I can't disagree with it. When we made the move earlier in the year, and you saw the instant benefit of having that second playmaker, second ball handler, lift on defense at that guard position, it certainly gives us more versatility on the defensive end of the floor to start games. I did find it interesting. I was talking with a couple buddies earlier in the week, and having an argument about where Halliburton ranks in the league as players overall, and defense came up, etc. He's still second in the league in real plus minus. His defense is not. His offense is tops in the league in terms of efficiency rating. He's the most additive player on the offensive end, but his defense is just slightly in the negative, and it still nets out to the second in the league overall. So I'm with you. I don't think there's a wrong answer there. Maybe Rick tries out a couple different lineups depending upon matchups and what we want to do.
I was just say, just like we said at the beginning of this year, what we start with the first game is probably actually not going to be what we go into the playoffs
Correct.
with. Just like with this season, we were all like, whoever we start's going to be great, but they're going to have to shake it up, because it's just unlikely they get the 5-man unit that has the most cohesion right off the gate.
No doubt about it. And I'll say this: props to the team for being so. I don't know if the coaching staff's just got them all drinking the Kool-Aid or what, but these guys you haven't heard a peep. And I listen to every possible thing you can listen to Pacers media related. there's not a peep about disgruntled or this guy not getting time it's just guys have come in. They've, Isaiah Jackson's had double doubles and this, that, and the other, and then he's riding the pine for 3 games. I mean, there's, and so we'll see how this shakes up. I think two things that I kind of want to talk about as we're talking about lineups here. We'll get to the trade, but now Siakam, I think we all believe is going to be the starting 4.
Yep.
How do you see that? So let's get to the second unit. Let's say it whether it's any combination of those 3.
Yeah.
You're going to have McConnell. You're going to have a combination of Buddy, Matherin, and Nembhard. 2 of those 3 will be on the bench. So presumably, are you kicking McConnell back down to the, beyond the 10-man? And then you've got Obi, Jalen Smith, and Isaiah Jackson. So how do you see... I think I just listed maybe 7 guys there, 6, 7 guys. How do you see who's going to be the odd man out, I guess, when this is all said and done? Because we got rid of Nora, who wasn't getting minutes, and added Siakam, and now we've got a bunch of guys who were getting minutes who presumably aren't.
Yeah, so that's where if I'm going off my lineup with Nembhard in, that's where I see TJ, and I still like him running that second unit, so I think he stays there, Buddy, Matherin. Then my gut would actually say I think you go with Jalen at the 5, and the 4 is where I almost think because you're going with Jalen, you put Obi at the 4 because I think they complement it just a little bit with more shooting, whereas Jackson lacks that a little bit. You could argue, obviously, we've gone from no 4s last year to now an abundance of 4s. Although I still like Jalen Smith as a 5. I don't think he's a 4, even though we've tried to make him, and he's played well in that position, as he can. But so that's where I kind of think I like Jalen's game, his rim protection, his size, his rebounding. One thing with this, we still do lack a little physicality, even adding, whereas Jalen's probably maybe one of our most physical players in the paint, just in terms of bodying people, rebounding. So I kind of like his energy coming in. And between, Obi and Jackson, it's really tough. They do very different things. They both live above the rim a little bit if you wanted to compare that, but I think especially defensively, Jackson is mobile, switch, everything, whereas Obi's run and gun, getting out quick. I just think Obi shot so well. I want to see that with the second unit, but again, I do not relish the coaching. I don't know what they're going to do with this and how they're going to keep everybody happy because they're also, other than Jalen, those 2 are in contract years. Yeah. So that gets a little interesting. So we'll have to see. What do you think?
No, it's a blessing and a curse, I guess, because we've got, and this is why, not to kind of bring this full circle, this is why I love this move so much right now is we have so much depth. We have the best bench in the league. We've said it all year. Excuse me. And I think that's why, when people say, well, does this really vault you into the top 3, in the East? I don't know. But I do know this. Having depth in a playoff series is really critical because matchup change, schemes change. Excuse me, I'm choking over here, but I don't envy the position of the coaches to try and make these decisions. I think listen, it's an injury-driven league. You're going to see guys sit out. We've already seen that with, a number of players this year. Tyrese is out right now. Bruce Brown missed time. Nesmith has missed time. Nembhard, Jackson, Smith. They've all had their time. Yep. So I think it's a luxury to be able to have guys that can go out and that you trust. It's also a luxury to have 2 first-rounders, again, still not even in the discussion at this point in your top 10, 11, 12-man rotation. So I think that's what kind of gets lost in all this is everybody's, the draft picks. We haven't even brought up their names because they're not playing right now. Ben and Jarris, and I hope that changes. I
texted you this morning and said, or maybe yesterday, and said, with this whole rotation thing and the logjam at 4, the crazy thing is next year I want Jarris to be getting consistent minutes at the 4. So
for sure,
it's even harder when it comes next year. He has to play at some point. We've seen flashes now where it's in the G League and even the limited minutes he's got in the game that he can play. So this question doesn't really get any easier. So
No, that's the perfect segue, Ryan, to you've got guys on expiring deals, whether it be Buddy Hield, whether it be Obi Toppin, Isaiah Jackson, I believe, is on an expiring deal. Mm-hmm. That to me is the obvious avenue to try and get Jarris on the floor. we cannot go into next year, and I know I'm jumping the gun here, but this is what deadline talk is all about, is setting up for the future. You can't go into next year with Siakam, Turner, Jackson, Smith, Obi, Walker. I mean, it's just, you've got to clearly define what you're doing there. So I'm curious, do you think that we see enough in Walker right now and kind of know what you're getting with an Obi or a Jackson or a Smith? Do you see those guys as being potential candidates for a trade come the deadline here in a couple weeks? Do we think we hang on to Buddy Hield? Does he, is he sold enough to come back for, let's be honest, I don't know what the open market's going to, pay for Buddy, but he's not having a great year in a contract year. I mean, as far as shooting is concerned, and that's what he's been billed at. So how do you see this playing out? Are we done? Are we going to see another move after the move?
I think for sure we make another move now. How big that is, just to kind of tweak the roster. Obviously, as we've just been talking about, there's a lot of fours you could potentially move. And it's one of those things where, maybe Obi comes to you and says, hey, I'd love to play in, wherever in Denver, be the backup forward. You can kind of facilitate an easy deal so he can sign there. KP's been very open with our players about trades and talks and trying to get them in spots. We did that with Malcolm Brogdon when we sent him to Boston. He kind of got to choose or help facilitate where he wanted to go. As far as Buddy, I actually think this trade makes it more likely he returns. I just think there's a clear need for shooting in his skill set. And Caitlin Cooper was talking on her podcast too, just how excited she is with the fit of Siakam and Buddy, just having... I was looking through some of Siakam's roster, and he really hasn't had a movement shooter since Danny Green, Fred VanVleet, a little bit.
Yeah.
And to go along, his best years were those years with the movement shooter Danny Green and Marc Gasol at center, a stretch big. So hopefully we can see good things from Siakam. So I kind of think that there's still a need for that. Maybe Shepard's that guy. I know you've told me a lot about that, coming in and through and kind of going to take that role as maybe the off the bench shooter. He's making 19 right now million a year. Does the team give him 10 to 15? Does he get more? I don't think so. I don't know how long he wants to sign. I mean, obviously him and Ty are really close. I know we worked on an extension this summer and couldn't come to a number. Maybe it's like you said, he's kind of having a down year. I'm sure Buddy wished he was a free agent last year, just with the numbers put up. But I don't think the league's always going to value shooting. There might be a team who's out there who kind of did what we just did and looks at Buddy and go, we'll throw him $20 million for 1 year. And does Buddy want that? I don't know. He's a workhorse. He does not miss games and doesn't get credit for that. His games, he's missed like 6 games in his whole career, which is just baffling. So he can kind of bet on his health going forward. His shooting's not going to decrease, his movement, all that with age goes. But he's still not at that age yet either. So I think this actually, I wouldn't be surprised if we ship Buddy at the trade deadline, but I think this makes it even less likely that he moves now.
I hope you're right, because I'm in agreement with you 100%. I think that this only helps Buddy. I think, again, we've talked about the fit with Siakam, and obviously the relationship with Halliburton. The shooting, we need a knockdown shooter. And, if you look at the free agent class for next year, I don't know. I've got it in front of me right now. I mean, you've got LeBron and Paul George leading in terms of their salaries, they're at the top of the list, but they both have player options. Those aren't realistic. Tobias Harris, James Harden, Drew Holiday, Gordon Hayward. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not signing up for Gordon Hayward. I know he's a hometown guy. He's a little bit more rangy, but the guy's had major injury and just hasn't been the same. DeMar DeRozan, Mike Conley, Lonzo Ball. I mean, these are the names at the top of the list. It's not anybody that you're really looking at and saying, okay, this is somebody I want to sign up for. So if you let Buddy walk, and that's really, I don't know. That's a tough. I don't know if Shepard's ready for that. I like Shepard from what I've seen in flashes, but is he ready to step into that role? I mean, this is somebody we're talking about that, is a starter for us. It could be, potentially through the balance of the year, depending on how the lineup goes. I would like to see us get something done there. Now, if we move him at the deadline, what are you moving him for? Because what you need is what he brings. That's that's exactly right. So that's what it always comes back to for me is it's like, okay, we've addressed the 4. We have a log jam of bigs. We got the point guard of the future. we need a shooter, and that's what you have. So it seems like it's almost an exercise in futility. It's like, find a number that works, I guess, is where I'm getting to. I don't see anything on the free agent market that has me super excited. Maybe there's somebody out there that, you can trade for that I'm not thinking of, that, it's the disgruntled player or what have you, but Buddy's durable. Okay, that's one. And shooters can shoot. I mean,
he's a volume shooter, which I think some people will be like, oh, this guy shoots 38% from deep. Even I'll talk about one player we like, Darren Collison, used to have the best 3-point percentage in the game, but he's taking like 1.5 a game.
Yeah, right. 1.8 a game.
Buddy is, one of my favorite bets is always just betting Buddy threes, because at the very least, he's going to put him up.
Yeah.
and it's a talent because of how well he moves without the ball. And obviously he's got a lot of chemistry with Tyrese. So it's one of those things, unless somebody's willing to give up a younger shooter on a longer deal, I don't see, why you trade him for a second rounder, a couple second rounders, or a Jordan Nwora. I just don't see that package out there. And I don't think KP wants to do that. I think Buddy likes it here. I mean, if you hear about him, how he talks about Sacramento compared to here, he loves it. Again, and I said this earlier, it's a little sticky because it sounds like we tried to extend him, couldn't. But now that we know where our money's going to be, maybe you can facilitate a little better, because you didn't want to be like, hey, we can't give you 20. We don't know who we're going to have come, February or June.
And you know what? I'll say this too. Buddy's mindset may have shifted slightly. I mean, this is a guy who's played, for the Pelicans and the Kings, largely. He's been in the league for what, 8, 9, 10 years? I don't know what it is now. Yeah. Played for largely irrelevant teams, and now he's getting his first taste of meaningful basketball. Yep. And if the season goes how we think it's going to go, and I kind of want to finish on that, is where do we go from here, and what does that look like? Where's the expectation and all that? But he's going to get a chance to play in the playoffs more than likely. Maybe he says, you know what, I don't want to say it's a hometown discount or whatever, but maybe that number looks a little different. He hasn't had a banner year. So it's not like he's, but he's going to be coveted. Yeah. Shooting is always going to be coveted, and shooting lasts longer than, athleticism, a la Obi Toppin, whatever. So we'll see how that all plays out. I'm with you. I hope we keep him. He's what we need. I'm excited to see him in this lineup. But we could make another deal. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that we would flip an Obi or an Isaiah Jackson for some sort of asset, an early second round pick or a couple of picks and considerations or whatever. Pritchard's shown, a propensity to do something like that, to acquire assets on guys that, you probably have to think Obi's going to go somewhere else this offseason now that we've got Siakam on board. That's just a guess on my part. But why don't we wrap with this? And I think this is kind of, the obvious but maybe often overlooked question: what does this mean for the rest of the year? Yeah. Where does this put us for the balance of the year? How does this change our expectation of what this team should be, could be, can be? I'm just curious your thoughts as we sit here on January 18th, a couple weeks before All-Star break.
Yeah, so I'll kind of comment. You've heard a lot of, I don't know if you've listened to a lot of the mainstream TV guys who say, well, that doesn't put you in the top 3.
I listened to all of it.
Yeah.
Stephen A.
They all say
Austin Rivers. Yeah, it was terrible.
And they're saying, so why'd you make this deal? So first, I'd just like to say one thing on that, because that's a ridiculous take. This isn't our all-in move. You hear the 3 firsts and you think, wow, 2 firsts next year and then 1 later. It's not like the Suns who traded Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and every draft pick they have. So we can still make moves. This wasn't the final, here we go, all the chips are on the table. So I don't know why all NBA guys seem to think like that. We're just trying to boost ourselves up because Tyrese is ahead of schedule. Yeah. So I think it's clear there's still a top 3 in the East. I agree with most people when they say that. The Celtics, the Bucks, and the Sixers. Yep. I think they are above everybody else. Each of them have MVP candidates. Not that we don't, but they've got guys who have proven it, played
established.
Yeah. I think then 1 tier below, I like to throw the Heat still in there. Now, we can talk. We'll probably battle with them record-wise. They are still the scariest team. They just win games in the playoffs.
Great coaching, great chemistry.
Jimmy turns into a new level. So I think
Bam is always challenging. Yeah.
Yeah. So we kind of find ourselves in that Cavaliers, Knicks, Magic tier. And I think the expectation is, and like I said with the Heat, they don't usually have the best regular season record. I mean, To me, if I'm looking, I started the season saying, let's try to make the playoffs. That would be a win. If we can get in, make it a competitive series against one of the top teams in the East. Now I'm kind of thinking, do we try to get in that 4 or 5 spot? Can we take out a Knicks team, a Cavs team, a Magic team if they can sneak in there with us, or a Heat team?
Right.
I think it's reasonable to say right now, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a failure if we don't win a playoff series, but it is now, it's on the board for sure.
Yeah.
Rick is walking in saying we're winning games, and then if we draw the Bucks or something crazy in the second round, why can't we take them? I mean, we've seen us play them well, so.
I'm with you. I agree 100%. The top 3 in the East are still the top 3 in the East. Tatum and Brown, they've got so much talent around them in Boston. You know, they go 6 or 7 deep with guys that have proven it on big stages.
They're in the Eastern Conference Finals every year, and then made the finals a couple times.
You know, but here's where I guess, you know, again, we've split the games with Boston so far this year. We're 4-1 against Milwaukee. I think we've split with Philadelphia, and we've probably got another 2 on the back half of the calendar with them. Mm-hmm. Those are going to be fun benchmark games, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, I think, you know, so much of playoff basketball comes down to matchups. I'm not really concerned with seeding, but I think Pascal's versatility allows us to match up better with all 3 of those teams. Right out of the gate, Tatum, Brown, Giannis, you know, Maxey, it doesn't matter who it is.
Tobias Harris.
Yeah, Tobias Harris, exactly right. There's a lot to like there. I guess if I had to put a clear line of demarcation, if you will, we should be a top 6 seed. I don't want to be in the play-in. I don't want to be in a play-in. We've made a win now move, and to me that means you're a top 6 team. The rest of the seeding, however it plays out matchup wise, you know, listen, we're Miami's got championship pedigree. I think they have the best coach in the NBA in Eric Spoelstra, in my opinion. And I love Rick Carlisle. That's not a shot at Rick. I think Rick's right up there. But Spoelstra's been able to do it, you know, with a wide variety of different players and playing styles. You know, the Knicks made a win now move, and we didn't get to touch on OG, and we can if you want to. But they made a win now move. I still like our level of talent better than New York. I think
that would be the most fun if we could match up in a first round 4 or 5 matchup with them. That would be awesome.
I would be all in on that, both because I think we can beat them and because I think it would be I think stylistically it would be a lot of fun to watch those 2 teams compete. But yeah, I think we got to make a top 6 seed. I think a playoff win is very much in our in the realm of possibility. And you know, listen, I'm not trying to overblow things, but we've played meaningful games. This team has shown we beat Boston in the in-season tournament. We beat Milwaukee in the in-season tournament. We beat Philadelphia in the in-season tournament. We turned around on a 2-game series after Giannis shenanigans with a game ball, bullshit, all that. We turn around and beat them twice, you know, on their floor and ours in games that were not really close. So I get it. Milwaukee and Boston and Philly on paper are better than us, but the East is fun right now. There's a lot of different teams. I think the Magic are still a bad matchup for us. I would not want to play them, particularly if we did land in a 7, 8, 9, 10 seed and we had to play them 1 game. You know, I don't like that at all because it's matchup driven. But this is a team that now, you said it already. This was not the all-in move. This is a step in the right direction with a guy that's going to turn 30 here in the spring. And again, if you look at guys like PG, Jimmy Butler, Kawhi Leonard, they're 32, 33, 34 years old. Pascal Siakam has good basketball left in him.
And those guys are playing well. Look at the Clippers. Him and Kawhi, who have gone through hell and back with injuries, are now maybe the best team in the West, at least. I mean, actively playing. Now, I'd still take Denver, but you know what I'm saying.
They're as hot as anybody. And I think, you know, I know LeBron's a freak, but the guy's damn near 40 years old. And I think the way that, you know, science and medicine and personal training and all the physio and strength training that these guys do, I am not worried about his age. The reality is Tyrese Halliburton is having a historic season right now. Nothing is guaranteed in the future. So you might as well try and get us 1 step closer. It's not all in, but it is a step closer to getting into that top four conversation, let's call it, in the East. Because from there, then it's just about what happens on the court. I don't really care about the seeding. It's all about matchups. It's about coaching. And I'd put Carlisle up against any of those teams. You know, like I said, I think Spoelstra may be the best coach in the conference. But aside from that, nobody else on those guidelines scares me. So I guess one last little anecdote here, because this is always going to be viewed, I think, through the lens of, particularly in Indiana because of the Indiana ties, the OG Anunoby trade, right? Because these two guys, Siakam and Anunoby, were talked about next to each other as guys that we could get. The four, Anunoby's more of the 3 and D, where Siakam's more of the playmaking four, if you will, that still has high level defense. Just point blank, are you glad we have Siakam? Would you rather have this been a trade for OG Anunoby?
I do envy where I kind of texted you and said, I think Siakam has about 8 out of the 10 things I wanted out of a wing.
Yeah.
I think one thing that we still lack as a team is that physicality. I talked about Neesmith kind of has it, where that is OG's thing. He is in your grill. He's on you. He's strong. I remember one game we were back out probably 5 years ago where he was guarding Domas in the paint and was holding his own very much. Domas was frustrated. So I don't think Pascal totally brings that, which I still think if you look at like Miles and Siakam, it's still kind of a long, maybe little frail group that can kind of get pushed around by some of those specifically larger teams.
Yeah.
But that's getting nitpicky. Everything else, I think Siakam fits better. I mean, truly, just offensively, playmaking, rebounding, pushing the pace, transition, it all points to Siakam. It really, like I said, it's hard to mold a player, I mean, without just picking everything, just bring LeBron James in. I mean, and it fit this well. So, no, I am, there was a little rumor, Woj said that we were actually trying to go after both of them, which I
saw that.
I believe the way they did the trade getting quickly and RJ Barrett, we would have to include Benny or Nemhard or Jarris to make that. And I think that was probably why. It would have been fun to have both of them. One, for sure, Siakam was the way to go. And I do think Neesmith and OG's probably a little better right now, but Neesmith is the same mold, just probably a little shorter that OG plays.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I think there's a little bit of the physicality element that we don't have, but sometimes it just comes down to who's the better basketball player, and I don't think there's a question. Siakam's a better player than OG.
Yep.
And yes, it doesn't necessarily address that need of ours, but it addresses a hell of a lot of others, and I think he's a better player. And we'll see. Well,
I think he wants to be here more. I think OG quietly wanted to be in a big market. It sounded like in New York was a good fit for him, and he's likely to resign there, just as it sounds like Siakam is for us.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. Both of them on expiring deals, and the two teams that the Knicks and the Pacers that made trades without really guarantees.
Yep.
But I think the fits are right, and we'll see where it goes. It's going to be exciting. It sounds like he came to Indy today to probably do a physical and all of that, and is on the plane to Portland. Will not play tonight, I don't think,
no,
but
sound like it.
but may get his first bit of action. Excuse me, I keep saying Portland. Where the hell are we tonight? Portland.
We are in Sacramento tonight. Then we go to Portland on tomorrow night. We're on a back-to-back.
Okay, so they said he's going to meet the team in Portland tonight, which means the team's probably flying to Portland after the game, and he'll meet them there. Mm-hmm. And hopefully we get to see some run in Portland. And if not...
and Tyrese is listed as questionable. He will not play, but I saw he's questionable. So hopefully around the corner he'll be back.
Yeah, I would love it if Tyrese was back for Tuesday's game, which I think is our first game back in Banker's life. To have Pascal, make his debut and Tyrese on the floor would be pretty cool. So... we'll bring this in for the landing. Anything else you got?
Let me actually, I've got 3 things I wanted, and there's been a lot of talk, and some people love to talk winners and losers of trades. I'm not going to talk about the actual assets per se.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring up 3 losers. And first, I want to say is the Raptors, and not for the deals they made here, because I actually think they got a decent haul back for an expiring deal, a guy who wanted to leave, kind of picking his spot. The Raptors did what I think a lot of teams fall trapped to, and were too patient with their players. If you look back after Kawhi left, they were second in the East after with Nick Nurse, who's one of my favorite coaches.
Yeah.
Great, keep it running. But they continually fell off. And now if you look, they had Fred VanVleet, OG Anunoby, and Pascal Siakam. And they waited too long on all of them. Fred, they just let walk, which the Houston threw more money than expected. That kind of sucks, but you got nothing from him. And then you waited till the very end with OG and Siakam. If you make these deals a year, 2 years ago, you are getting massive hauls back.
Yeah.
Way more than what they just got offered. So it's kind of one of those more warnings where you look, and I talk, a lot of Raptors fans, I think, are reiterating this, that they kind of held too long. And the truth is their rebuild's going to be pretty flying fast, kind of like ours with Scotty and Quickly and RJ. They've got a lot of talent already in the building. So I don't hate what they did. I just think they didn't quite strike when the iron was hot.
That is a really good point, and not one that I had thought about, but you're 100% right. Sometimes you hold the cards too long, and they were running out of time.
We almost did that, truthfully. Yeah. We were holding on to our cards. I mean, you can say with Brogdon we even did, but
I can't stand Brogdon. That's you're so right though. I mean, it's a fickle thing, but the clock is running out, and I don't know what other deals were out there.
Yeah.
Particularly for OG, and I'm sure we threw our hat in the ring, before the Knicks executed that trade. But you're 100% right. It does not pay. The first movers are the ones that typically win in the NBA, and that's why I love this deal, because we moved on something. And
exactly.
if we wait, he can go anywhere he wants in free agency. And by the way, he still can. But now you've got 3-4 months to convince him why he should stay here. And I think it sounds like all signs are pointing to that he will. So I know you said you had a couple other
Two
things.
more.
Yeah.
So number 2, and this one I haven't heard anyone talk about, and I kind of think it's very underrated. And I think the Kings are massive losers in this.
Okay.
And why? So about a month, or maybe not a month, a couple weeks ago, reports were Kings were in the Siakam trade rumors. They were trying to trade for Siakam. And I think if you look at the Kings have more picks than us. Kings have a lot of young talent they could have thrown at them. I actually would guess, and this is kind of speculation, the Kings likely would have spent more to get Siakam. But Siakam came out and said he would not likely re-sign a long-term deal with Sacramento. So if you look at it kind of from a hindsight, the Tyrese trade might have cost them Siakam too, because it's clear Siakam wants to play with Tyrese.
Yeah.
So they lost out because you can't trade for him, just as we've said, and then not re-sign him. You're giving up assets for nothing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this double-edged sword where if you are, and I know Kings fans are happy, the 16-year drought, all that. I don't care what anybody says. We fleece the trade, even if they're good. If you put Tyrese on the market right now, he gets 5 first-round picks, every young talent player you have. The teams would send the fucking house for him. If you put Domas on the trade block, you'll get stuff for him. You'll get like an OG and picks. But, I mean, there is a huge difference. So, Kings fans, I wish you the best. We do. I mean, we're playing tonight, so I hope you lose. But, but I just thought about that, and it came to me. I was like, oh, my God, if that's true, and they were trying to get Siakam, in theory, if they had Tyrese, I wonder if he would have gone. And now you look and you're like, oh my God, that's a lot to miss out on.
It's a ton to miss out on. And the interesting thing is, I was just looking at this 2 nights ago, so maybe this has changed, but the betting odds for the NBA MVP, Tyrese and De'Aaron Fox were at the same, I think they were tied for 7th or 8th or something like that in the betting odds. De'Aaron Fox is having a phenomenal year. I'm not taking anything away from him, but Tyrese is just, he's ascended to a different level than De'Aaron Fox. And I think that's at the heart of what you're talking about here is Siakam does not view De'Aaron Fox as talented as he is, as talented as Domas is. That's not a destination where you're not talking about guys wanting to go to Sacramento so they can play with Fox.
Correct.
Right? And that is the Tyrese Halliburton effect that I don't think anybody, most notably the Kings, realized when this trade happened a couple of years ago. Nobody saw this coming, and that's why now is such a good time, because it's happening right now. Again, there's nothing like today, right? There's you can plan in 5 years, and there's nothing like today, and that's why I love this trade. So, last point.
Last point, and this one I will preface it saying, if you did not like the way Bruce Brown played for us and critiqued his play on the court this year, power to you. I can agree there were weaknesses. He wasn't as strong on defense at certain points. I agreed. Not as good a shooter, or didn't have the shooting year we might wanted. But to all the Indiana fans who read Bruce Brown's contract over the offseason and freaked out, you need to take a step back and learn how these contracts work, because this is why we signed a deal like this. So you can move him, players, it makes salary work. It's one of those things that I don't think a lot of fans truly understand how the cap space works. And if we didn't sign a player to a certain number, we would have been below a cap floor. Not going to get into all that. I really only bring that up because we'll be hearing from these people again once we sign Siakam to a massive deal.
I thought about that the other night. If we don't sign Bruce to that deal, we can't do this.
No.
We don't have the ability to make this trade happen. We were close to probably having the only other way we would have had to make it happen was throwing in more pieces, putting in
have to been like
more,
Miles, or
right.
I mean, to make contracts work. It's hard to explain over this. And Tony East is the best with cap space, especially with
He's
the
got his
Pacers.
spreadsheet.
Yeah, he's got his numbers, so that's always great. But yeah, I just don't think a lot of fans, they just read the headline. It's like, oh my God, $20 million. Where it's like, well, team option, we can trade him.
Team option, we can trade him, and we needed to spend the money anyways.
Let's just say we were going to have to spend that money somewhere. So people are like, we could have spent it better. I was like, who was out there last year in the free agent class? Bruce was the best.
No,
that was realistic.
And you know what's interesting? The only thing about the Bruce piece that could, I don't want to say come back to haunt us, is a little bit, the Raptors are not clear on whether they're going to keep him. They may flip him. I've heard rumors about the Knicks having interest, which is just an interesting storyline as we talk about the playoffs and how different scenarios could go. I'm sure, not that Bruce has probably any ill will against us. We paid him $22 million this year. Listen, there's a reason he didn't suit back up for the Nuggets, right? He got paid. And
he wanted his money.
He wanted to get paid, and good for him. But I'm sure that would be an interesting, matchup to get him back potentially in a playoff or some meaningful games at the end of the year against New York. I'm not sure when they're on the schedule again, but I know we've got to play him again. So it's a point well said, and the general fan doesn't understand that at all. They're not looking at it from that perspective.
Fine. Look, it's not Indiana fans per se. They all do it. Every fan overreacts.
And here's the thing. In the modern NBA, $22 million,
not that much.
Paul George has got a player option for $48 million next year that he probably will turn down.
Correct.
To try and sign for more money in his age 33, 34 years. So
Jaylen Brown contract this year that he signed in the offseason will end at $60 million per year. So
$22 million is it's not that much. And when we pay Siakam next year, whatever the hell we're going to pay him, it's a tough pill to swallow, but the cap's only getting larger. You're going to have to pay these guys if you want talent to particularly, I said it before, you're not getting anybody taking a discount to come to Indiana.
Nope.
So get ready to write the check, and hopefully that comes with some wins. And it's going to be fun to see how this thing plays out for the next couple of weeks and months of this year.
Yeah, it's Pacer basketball is fun. To say the least.
I think we're one of the most exciting. I mean, they said, I will give the national guys credit on this. They said League Pass, if you're not watching the Pacers, if they're not in your top 5 League Pass watch, you're missing the boat. And so they at least will recognize that. And I know I'm going off here, but I don't think they realize some of the changes we've made on defense in the last month. I think they look at the aggregate, which still shows us having one of the worst defenses, but we've had like the 16th best rating in the last 6 weeks or something like that. We're going to get better on that end of the floor. I'm almost convinced of that. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, and a lot of fun. We'll look forward to seeing Siakam here in the next couple of games, and come back at you with something here in the near future.
Yep, love it.
Awesome. Signing off. See you.